Welcome everyone. My name's Vida and this is Sri Lankan Cricket Podcast, a podcast where we discuss current news and developments happening in the cricket world with a special focus on Sri Lanka cricket. This is a special interview episode and I'm joined by my co-host Sohan. How are you doing, Bura?
Good, Vida. How are you keeping?
I'm good, Bura. Very excited for this new interview series. In this series, we will be talking with a variety of guests about their roles and their involvements in the cricket field. And today we are delighted to welcome Estelle Vasudevan. Welcome to Sri Lankan Cricket Podcast as our very first guest, Estelle.
Thank you so much, guys, for having me. Honored to be the first guest. Happy to be here.
Glad to have you with us, Estelle. I want to introduce Estelle to our listeners first. For those unaware, Estelle is the editorial manager at thepapare.com, Sri Lanka's #1 sports hub. And she loves cricket, athletics, netball, any sport, you name it. She loves it. But in today's conversation, we are going to talk more about cricket, especially women's cricket in Sri Lanka, and pick Estelle's brains on that topic.
Yeah, so now this is our very first interview episode. So we thought we'll start this with a little game to break the ice. We'll ask 3 cricket-related questions and you'll have to pick one answer and explain us why. And you can't sit on the fence on these questions, Estelle. So you're keen to play?
Yeah, kind of a bit nervous about the choices, but yeah.
It's like at the toss.
Don't worry, they're not tricky questions. Don't worry. So I'll go with the first one. Test cricket or limited overs cricket?
Okay, so that's I'm not going to say which one is better, but what do I prefer watching at the moment? Limited overs cricket.
Okay, any reason for that, Estelle?
I think at the moment Sri Lanka it's less painful to watch limited overs cricket because Test cricket is 5 days of difficulty and limited overs cricket is limited.
I would have gone the other way around. I love red ball cricket, so I don't know about you, Bora.
Good one. As a player, white ball, I do tend to be more confident in white ball cricket, but test cricket, that's traditional test cricket, you tend to watch the game a bit as well. But as a player, limited overs.
Okay, interesting. So 2-1. Okay, we'll move on to players then. These 2 players, they have done really well in both formats, so it'll be a tough one. Elise Perry or Mithali Raj?
Okay, that's a really easy one for me. I'll take Elise Perry any day of the week.
See the count? Yeah. I've got Elise Perry as well.
Me too.
She's just a tick above the rest.
Exactly.
I was lucky to see how she trains up close at the City Power Center. She, an athlete, is all like an expert. She'll do the rounds and, you could see her sprinting in. She's dedicated in that aspect. She's played a bit of soccer or football as well, and what she's done in the field of cricket it's an easy one, like Estelle. So Vida, I think you are in the same boat as well, aren't you?
Yes, definitely. She's been dominating in all formats for the last I don't know, for several years, and we'll see her for a few more years to come as well. So definitely she's my top pick. We'll move on to 2 men's cricket bowlers, Wasim Akram or Glenn McGrath.
Okay, so I'll say this now. I'm a huge 90s Aussies fan. I'm still a bit of an Aussie fan, but of the 2, I mean, you have to have Wasim Akram, right? Like he was like the bowler of our childhood. The way he kind of set the bar for fast bowlers, and as a left armer swinging the ball, you can't go past Wasim in the 90s, definitely.
Yeah. Bora is similar with his left arm swing spin sometimes with the new ball.
Who can
brings
spin
it
in. I think Estelle, you nailed it on the head when you said you're a massive 90s fan. I think we all were Steve Waugh led that team, the Invincibles as we called it, and then they were such a And I mean, Glenn McGrath along with Shane Warne led that teams. But rightly saying a left arm off a short run up, or it looks like he's hardly running, but Wasim Akram had everything. I mean, on YouTube, there's a video clip. I think Roshan Manam cops it 2 balls in a row where he's struggling. So, and then there are numerous videos of Wasim Akram just bamboozling the batsmen.
Same here. I mean, if you ask 10 great batsmen in the era he has played, I think at least 7 of them will tell Wasim was the toughest bowler they faced. Yeah, so I think no competition there.
All right, that was interesting. I'm sure our listeners would like to hear about your background in the sport, and the interesting story is how you fell in love with the game, and talk us through, the listeners, as well as your journey so far.
Yeah, well, like I think any kid in Sri Lanka growing up in the 90s, cricket was a major part of our entertainment. I know I grew up. My parents loved sport, any sport. I mean, I grew up with posters of Pete Sampras, Michael Johnson, guys like that on our walls, with posters on our walls. So definitely, sport was a massive part of growing up. I have an older brother, 7 years older to me. So I remember at one point in our lives when he started playing cricket, I think probably under 13, when he started playing leather ball cricket, my father used to give catches for all 3 of us. I have a sister as well, older sister. So, I mean, that's where I think the kind of love for it came. Very soon, like, my brother was too big and too good to bowl to me. So, I used to have to do the throwing it at the wall, hitting it, chasing it, throwing it at the stumps, all of that. So, I guess it was part of our lives, right, in the 90s, because it was such a popular thing in Sri Lanka, and we saw guys like Sanat Jayasuriya really capture our imaginations at that time. Yeah. So that's how I kind of got into sport. And unfortunately, unlike guys, opportunities were not there to really pursue or to think of pursuing cricket. But any sport I could play, I played when I was in school. Yeah, so I think that's about it. How I got into the sport. I don't remember a time that I was not into it. There was no moment, because it was like from birth, it was kind of there.
As a player, how will you describe yourself? I mean, I've heard Andrew Fidel, a fellow journalist, he talks himself up as a leg spinner. I think so. But how would you, as a player, what would you introduce yourself?
Yeah, well, it's a funny story. So while I was in school, we used to play cricket a lot, softball cricket, as in just casually during the breaks and stuff like that. So they are mostly, there's no run up and all, so you can't bowl. So you bat. So in school, I would say I was a batter. I could hit the long ball and stuff.
You'll be a Sanat Jayasuriya or a Roshan Manam? Or
I think more I would love to say Sanat Jayasuriya. Who else, right? So after I finished my bachelor's, I just signed up with Colts just to play some cricket casually, hardball, and at that point, I think I was much more of a bowler. So I bowled like Andrew. Maybe it's a writer's thing. I was a bit of a
No, you're right. I mean, when we started, we all wanted to be a Sanat or a Roshan. Then as we go along, we realized, hang on, I'm not as good as they are. I might be a bowler. So it happened to me. I became a bowler. So I understand. I understand completely. We're gonna talk more about ladies cricket today. So let's get right into it. It seems like the big 3 cricket nations with New Zealand are the only countries playing enough women's cricket at the moment. In our last episode also, we talked about Chamari Atapattu finally getting to play some cricket here in Australia. What's going on with Sri Lanka women's cricket at the moment? Will you be able to give us a summary of the current status of Sri Lanka women's cricket, Estelle?
Yeah, so as you guys might have heard, since the 2020 Women's T20 World Cup, Sri Lanka haven't played any international cricket since then. So that's coming upon now 19 months. In between that, they've had one domestic tournament. Chamari Atapattu and Shashikala Sirivardhana were fortunate enough to take part in the women's IPL that they had last year. So those two got a little bit more game time. Apart from that, they've only just really had they've had residential training camps in Tabula and Colombo. So they've had training, and I think they've played a couple of games intra-squad as well as against some age group boys teams. So I think under 17 school boys, stuff like that. So that is it over the past 1.5 years. No international cricket. We're hoping that there will be a tour in October to Pakistan, thanks to England's withdrawal from that series. So that could be something that is in the future. And of course, November, in part of November, the World Cup qualifiers will start. So that's what is in store. As you said, Chamari Atapattu is with the WBBL at the moment. Yeah, with the Scorchers. So that's a little bit of, I think, plus at least in the fact that she will maybe get some game time, good training at least there before the qualifiers start.
Chamari Atapattu will have a good following here amongst the even the Sri Lanka contingent up here. I would like to touch base on your article that was on the Women's Criczone magazine as well. I've read it a few times, and you talk about it's a lovely read where you talk about Sri Lanka women's cricket. Talk us through a bit of how that came about and what inspired that story.
Yeah, so basically, what I felt a lot is that nobody really talks about the women's team. Like, I mean, if you think about it, we hardly hear about it. If Chamari Atapattu scores some runs, then people talk about the team. But otherwise, there's really very little going on there. So actually, Women's Crickzone, they contacted me to write a story on the team, particularly because I think a lot of people outside Sri Lanka don't understand how, if you guys recall, around in 2013 during the Cricket World Cup, Sri Lanka beat England and India for the very first time in women's cricket.
Yeah.
So that was a massive, it was a massive point for Sri Lanka at that time, where they were able to beat two of the top teams in the world. And yet from there, like what people outside of, maybe even in Sri Lanka, don't see is what happened since then to now. Because I was just going through some footage of interviews that have been done with players who played then and like immediately after the World Cup. And there were actually genuine kind of hope or expectations that during the next World Cup, that is in 2017, Sri Lanka would actually be quite competitive. Because we finished fifth in the 2013 World Cup. So there was hope in, okay, the next 4 years, they're going to build on this and really be competitive. But since that 2013 World Cup, we haven't made it past the first round in any of the World Cups we played. So not in the T20 World Cups and not in the 50-over campaign. So just to tell that what happened, what are the reasons or what can we point at as the causes for them going from being one of the, promising sides in world cricket, a team that potentially could have really upset a few more top teams in the coming years, to a team that once again at the most recent World Cup, the T20 World Cup in 2020, Sri Lanka won just one game. They beat Bangladesh.
Yeah.
So what happened in between that time? So that was the kind of reasoning behind it. That's what they also wanted to know from me. So I think that was the area of focus when getting that story out.
You're spot on there. I mean, you summed it up nicely. We were in the system I was there till up until 2016, and Bora left in 2014. And we've seen the progress of Sri Lanka women's cricket because we used to train in the same facilities over those years. And you're spot on there. I mean, I've seen how they've built up that team, and but I haven't seen what's been happening for the last 4 years. But as you said, result shows that we haven't been competitive in international arena.
In this article, there is, I mean, I've been going through, I've just a key area thought I'll highlight. There is a glowing tribute to a key person, Harsha De Silva, who molded this team together and formed a strong leadership group. This is the 2013 or a few years leading up into it, where the Sri Lankan girls were at their peak. But after that, it seemed to be spiraling down, to which you've just enlightened us. Reading through the article, this brought memories as with us, because we trained a lot together, and there was how do you say, the girls were always at the facilities training. Ketta Rama, the fitness aspects was led by Dinendra, who was overseeing that as a trainer. Even the use of the facilities in terms of the nets, the girls were always there, up and about, because they were driven to a certain aspect. Do you see that still happening, or where do we are currently in the training aspects?
Yeah, so one massive, I think, thing that has happened over the last year is that they have Sri Lanka Cricket has been able to acquire the PSARA a net for the women. So basically, like a high performance center in Kettarama, this one's separately functioning for the girls. So I think that's a massive step because, as you guys may have noticed when you all were there, like it's very crowded, right? You've got the guys and the girls and everyone all the time. So this, I think it's good because they have all the facilities, they have the swimming pool, everything, the nets.
Yeah.
So they're able to kind of, I think, take as much time as they need and train there. So that's a really good thing. I think they've acquired it for 10 years, if I'm not mistaken. So that's a good, I think, a really good step in the right direction for the girls.
Vida, you might remember, like the girls were pretty competitive back in the time. Sripali, she was one of the fittest going around in that crew, and I remember like she was used as an example even when it comes to some of the fitness sessions that were in play. So that's that strong crew that we highlight. I know Chamari Atapattu, Eshani, she was there. Yeah, and then few names that come up that was driven, that they became figures as well that we looked up into. Like I think you summed it up right at the start. You talk about that celebration that's still in our memories, because we see that as a iconic one. It's like Arjuna lift in the World Cup, but that was a big victory for us, where everyone celebrating, running to the ground, kind of. I mean, it's a glaring sight where we say the girls haven't played. I mean, it's 500 days without an international game. That's a very scary situation to be in. That's where I think Sri Lanka cricket needs to work towards promoting cricket as a gender equal sport. We'd like to provide more opportunities for the girls to participate. And ideally, I mean, suggestion would be it forms under the Sri Lanka cricket structure, either through the nominated provincial structure or a club structure, where you got your women's and the men's team falling under one banner. So there is accountability, and there is a drive behind it to promote. That's how I feel should be. I mean, a lot of the teams that we talked about, the big three and the New Zealand, that's tend to be the practice. In ideal world, if a strong team like an SSC or NCC could feel the women's team, that'll be like the banner where we promote. What's a strong club, Estelle, amongst the girls in the domestic tournaments going around? Do you think NCC might be close to fielding a women's team in the near future, or?
Yeah, I'm not sure about NCC, but at the moment, I think last year we had a new Chilau Marians fielding a new side. So they had Chamari Atapattu as well. But overall, I think the structure is supported a lot by the forces. So Air Force have a good team, Navy has a good team, Army has a decent team. Colts also plays. Sinigama is a good team. I think Sinigama overall, both boys and girls, they've got a really good system where they're getting some young players through. So I remember this Kavisha Dilhari, who's currently in the national team, playing in around 2014 when I went with Colts over there. And even at that point, she must have been like 15 years old. very confident, I think that's one area that we don't see in our women's team is that confidence to kind of not sledge the batter, but like be in their face, kind of that aggressiveness we don't see, right? So she really had that, and you can see that when she comes on to the international field. She's not coming in as, okay, I'm 17 years old, I'm new to this. She doesn't have that vibe. So that's another good structure. I think Sinigama is doing a lot. I think overall, we've seen guys like even Pulina Tharanga coming through that system. So in terms of strength,
Kaushal, also
exactly,
I believe coming through the system, they've got something good going on there.
Yeah, and in terms of strength, I would say still it's the forces. So from what I'm aware, every year it's either kind of Navy or Air Force that really dominate because they have a majority of the national players. So that's the kind of system. Because I think financially it's very difficult because what I've seen is when I was at Colts also, like, say someone like Harshita Samaravikrama, who's currently vice captain of the national team, she was in school at that point. So she played for Colts. But once they leave school, then the temptation to join one of the forces is high because there you know you're going to get a steady wage and things are going to be taken care of. So playing for one of the clubs outside of that is tough when we don't know about the payments and all of that.
I think that's a fair reflection because cricket, it's a time consuming sport. So you need time out of your work life, you need time out of your personal life as well. And then I think it's driven on the financial factors for the girls out there as well. So I think that's a very, very valid point.
Yeah, I think that's a good segue to move on to talent identification and finding new talent. In your article, you highlighted the stark difference between when it comes to the amount of games our girls play before they play for the national team. I mean, comparing to the other countries, we hardly play any games. And we all know Sri Lanka men's cricket system has a luxury of having a strong school cricket system to produce players, I mean, quality players year after year, right? And how difficult is it to identify talent to represent our country without a proper junior feeding system like school cricket for girls?
Yeah, I think that's one of the major issues Sri Lanka cricket is also trying to address. From what I've heard, is that they are approaching some of the rural schools and giving out equipment and trying to start a base where cricket is played in a lot of schools. So as you mentioned in the boys' school setup, I don't know any school in Colombo that doesn't have cricket. Every school plays, right? Yeah, every school plays. So then automatically you have, like, even if like there are 3 good players in every school, you already have a massive group to choose from. But for the girls, that's not the case. So there are schools like, I think, Gautami Balika, Anula Balika, which are quite good in terms of they've kind of dominated that girls' schools Division 1 cricket. But it's not the same as guys because there aren't many schools playing. I don't think in Colombo any of the major schools play because, like you said, it's a time-consuming sport, right? Like, it's tough and you require equipment. That's the other thing.
Yes.
I mean, if you want to play netball, you need a ball and a goalpost. You want to play football, you just need a ball. But for cricket, if you're playing hardball cricket, then you need equipment as well. So I think that's one area. I think financially there was a system in place. Apsara Tilakaratna was, I think, visiting a lot of schools personally. She and her team visiting a lot of schools outstation and trying to encourage them to start playing cricket so that Sri Lanka will have that wider pool of players to pick from when it comes to the club stage. But I think at the same time, we have to ensure that once it comes to the club arena, that there is a proper system there as well. Because, like I mentioned in the article, like I was speaking to Shashikala Sirivardhana, she retired last year. So she was telling me sometimes there may be a girl from India coming into the Indian national team, who has played more domestic cricket in whatever 3 years she has played than Shashikala has played over her entire career. So Shashikala now has been playing for more than 10 years. So
so
that is that is that area. It's all well and good to build. That's a good thing, absolutely good thing. Getting more schools involved. I think encouraging also. Apsari had a plan to encourage more big matches between schools teams, so that that interest also grows. But we also have to ensure then that after those kids leave school, there is a proper system in place that will see to that talent and ensure that that talent gets to the national stage.
I think looks like the groundwork's being done there. Like you mentioned, Apsari going and promoting cricket amongst the community, rural schools, and it'll eventually come into the Colombo regions as well. The more cricket, spot on how you mentioned the girls needed to have more time of matches under their belts. It's similarly to the girls, even from the structures, the younger they start, they learn the game a lot more. They move very freely, naturally from a coaching point of view so the skills are already aligned, and that's that build up of training. You've got the girls who've trained over 10, 12 years of cricket in meeting it out at the international level, and they are naturally ready for the game. So looks like hopefully it's a good tick, and we'll see those in the coming years ahead as changes.
Yeah, I think you're both spot on there. I mean, I can add a little bit from my experience coaching women's cricket here in Australia, Bora and Estelle. Girls, they tend to come in groups to play and join a cricket club or join the sport. Players like Alyssa Healy and Alyssa Perry and their success in the international level, they've seen all that on TV and they want to be there. And especially after that World Cup win at MCG, nearly sellout crowd, and Katy Perry performing in the final, and the girls won the cup and they won the stage, and all the girls wanted to be there, and we saw a dramatic increase in numbers turning up to play cricket for our club. I mean, Chamari Atapattu, we can call her like Sana Jayasuriya of Sri Lankan women's cricket, right? And that 1.5 years she hasn't played cricket is a big loss for us. I mean, imagine if she had played few more big innings like she played in the World Cup against Australia in TV, amount of interest she could have created among women in Sri Lanka.
Yeah, I think when I was speaking to you guys earlier, I mentioned like you guys started playing cricket. Why did you start playing, right? Because you saw the Aravindas, the Sana Jayasuriyas on TV. You wanted to be like them. I also played cricket, like I mentioned, at home, casually, whatever, for fun. Yeah. But it never entered into my mind that this is a career because I don't see women playing it.
Yep.
At that time, right? I don't see women playing it. I didn't even think there isn't it. It didn't enter my mind as an option at all.
Yeah.
Because there was no pathway. So similarly, I think even now we are fortunate enough that at least international women's cricket is on TV now, where we see India, Australia playing. But imagine how many more would be there if, like you said, like the men's team, every month there's a tour where Sri Lanka is playing, and every month you see Chamari Atapattu on TV. And more than anything, you think of those girls career-wise, right? 1.5 years of their lives without that work.
Yeah, that's very
no
sad.
Opportunity to hone your skills, because it's all well and good to train. They've been training, but it's not like playing, right? You guys would know because you played competitive cricket, right?
Yeah,
you can train as much as you want, but you need to play.
Yeah.
So that's what's sad about Chamari, I think. And when you think about it, like she gets this opportunity at the BBF purely on reputation.
Yes.
But what if there are other girls who are good enough to play, but they are not seen? So yeah, it's a lot of opportunity. Exactly, yeah.
Coming back into the article, we talk about us not being playing cricket for so long. Bangladesh women's have also not played close to a year of cricket. Is that right, Estelle? Or
I think they've had some A-team cricket going on, so they've had that kind of development side happening internationally. I think, if I'm not
okay,
mistaken, they did play the South Africa A-team.
yeah,
So that's been happening. I think out of the top 8 or top 10, Sri Lanka is possibly the only team that has not had any international cricket during that period.
okay. Talking about appointments, I mean, we've read in the media, Hashan Tilagaratna is taking over in charge of the women's team. It's a strong appointment. Also, Apsari Tilagaratna, you talk about the workload she's been putting in behind the scene, promoting the game of cricket. So another strong combination now, Hashan Tilagaratna coming on board. So it argues well for the game. What do you think? It looks on paper, it looks like a right step, a good step in the direction we want women's cricket to be heading into.
Yeah, I think it's definitely the most high-profile appointment they've had. And from what I've heard, he's quite good with the players as well. My
Yes.
only fear is that when it comes to women's cricket, what we often see is a lot of coaches are also there, it's just a stepping stone for them to a different job.
Yep.
So I really hope that if Hashanti Ratna is going to be given the responsibility, or he has already been given the responsibility to take over the women's team, that it's not just until they want him for the A team, or until they want him to come and be batting coach for the national team, or they want
Yep.
him with the under 19 or development setup. So if it is for the long term, I think it's good, because as what we can tell from the success that Sri Lanka have had in the past, it's not just the our women's team, but you look at Australia. Of course, Australia's system is completely different, but
Yeah.
Matthew Mott's been with them for, I think, close to 6 years,
Yes.
and you see that around the world, right? A coach takes time to build and to kind of gain the trust of his players, and to kind of build that. It doesn't come overnight. So I hope that's what happens with Hashan as well.
Yep.
That it's not just okay, we want to give him something, so let him be coach of the women's team, but rather that it's used as a means to actually grow the game and build on the team.
Do girls in Sri Lanka like picking up bats, getting involved with the game? I know the participation, I mean, there's a good following. Like, come the big matches time, you have more girls coming in to watch games. They love supporting the teams, international cricket. I mean, when Sri Lanka play in front of a packed crowd in Ketarama, you've got the numbers. But do you see the girls picking up bats, getting involved with the game of cricket happening in Sri Lanka? Or you still think there's more room for improvement?
Yeah, I think that again comes back to that whole, the saying, you can't be what you can't see. So when it comes to girls, I think definitely, like I mentioned, I was speaking to Shashikala Sirivardhana a couple of months ago about this article, in fact. And I asked her, like, from the time you started, obviously she started at a time when it was not popular at all, or
Yeah.
like there weren't many playing. And now, is there a difference? So she runs an academy with her husband at MCA. And what she told me was that now there are earlier, if she saw like 5, 6 players, now there are about 40 or 50 coming to her. So
Okay.
obviously there's a massive uh, interest. I think
Yes.
there would definitely be, there's an interest in the sport. Like you said, everybody loves watching cricket, right? In Sri Lanka, most people at least.
Yeah.
But to see it as an option to play, then you have to see people playing it. So
Yeah.
that, I think,
Yes,
the
right.
whole the fact that we've seen cricket on TV, women's cricket on TV over the past, say, 4, 5 years, must definitely have had an impact, and it's seen by the participation numbers from that one case that Shashikala said. I think it's again, it obviously there is room for improvement. And I think if there are more schools playing, then automatically that comes in. The whole big match idea, I think I was quite keen on that, because that automatically kind of creates a kind of excitement in within schools, and even those who are not interested in the sport kind of come in to support the players and such, and there's a hype build, and then that encourages more participation. So hopefully, that was before COVID when they planned to do that, so I don't know what the situation right now is. I think a lot of plans are disrupted, and they're going to have to kind of pick up the pieces now. But like, there is room for improvement. There is definitely room for more participation.
That's good, because looking at what has been happening around the world, in Australia, the WBBL kicked off, getting more girls participated in the sport. In the UK, we've seen the 100 kicked off. That was a big success for the sport, especially with the females playing the game. I think it increased more participation numbers. Those are competitions we got to study and see. It could be a program that works for us. The T10 fits in well, because number one, for someone learning the sport, we don't go back into saying it's a traditional game. You got to play red ball cricket, test cricket, one-day format. It's simple, it's called the 100. It's just a new concept where anyone can learn it, and there's that entertainment factor. It ticks the box when it comes to entertainment, ticks the box when it comes to time. So it's different, and someone is say it's not the traditional cricket that everyone speaks about, and it might break it easier for a new participant. I hope that, there was talks of a T10 tournament being held in Sri Lanka. Is that right? Or is the groundwork being done for that?
So there was a call, I think, from Sri Lanka Cricket requesting for people who are willing to sponsor to come in. But I'm really not sure whether much thought was given to it, because it was to be done at a big scale with international players and all of that, basically like the LPL, but a T10 league. But I'm not sure much thought was given to it, because if I'm not mistaken, the call for sponsorships, it lasted like a week. I don't know whether it's still up on Sri Lanka Cricket, but so those things take a lot of planning, as you know. So I'm not sure that will go ahead right now, but maybe sometime in the future. But of course, I am a firm believer that you first have to, the foundation needs to be built. So if your club system is playing 5 matches a year, then there's no point bringing a T10 league, because the quality there is not going to be great. And then when it's an interesting thing with women in I think most arenas, right? So if I say something dumb, people will say, what do women know about sport? Okay, if I say something stupid now, right? People will ask, what do women know about cricket? But if one of you say it, they say, what does Sohan know about cricket? So that is there a little bit. So if they do play T10 league and they don't play well, like, obviously something like a T10, you are expecting to see boundaries and that kind of cricket, right? Big hitting and all of that. If that doesn't happen, then automatically it's a massive risk, because then people are like, it's boring, I don't want to watch that. So it could go either way. If you have done the groundwork and you have the players and you play well, then it'll catch on. And that's what happened with the 100, right? They have quality players. They got Indian players. They got players from all over, South Africans. I think another really up and coming good team. So when it's quality cricket, then everyone wants to watch, right? I know, like, while I was on call with you guys, my dad is watching the test match, the India-Australia test match. So if it's good cricket, you watch it. But it could go the other way, where they're not ready for that kind of thing, and then it falls to the cracks. And then in future, you can't pitch it, because everyone's like, no, last time we tried it and it was a real flop. So it can go either way.
I think that's a good segue to talk about what's going to happen in the future for ladies cricket. in Sri Lanka. We saw in the media there's a possible tour to Pakistan to play 3 games, and the new appointment of the coaches and the new training facilities, which is a good thing happening in women's cricket in Sri Lanka. So looking at all these things, what are our chances in the World Cup qualifiers, which is going to happen in Zimbabwe? What do you think our chances are?
Yeah, I think it's going to be really tough because it's going to be 10 teams and 3 spots. They're going to be fighting for 3 spots. And we've also got Pakistan, West Indies, and Bangladesh among those teams. So those are going to be the major challenges disregarding the others, even teams like Zimbabwe, Thailand, have done well in the past. Thailand, in particular, I think in the T20 format, had a pretty good record coming into the World Cup last year, of course.
Yeah.
So it's going to be tough. My gut feeling is that West Indies and Pakistan look like the favorites to top the tournament. But that third place spot, I think we have a good chance. It will all depend, I think, a lot on the bowlers in particular, because of course the batting is going to rely a lot on Chamari Atapattu. We won't have Shasikala Sirivantanam because she's retired. So that's the usual. So you're going to have to bank on Chamari, and hopefully she'll have some match practice coming in after the BBL as well. The bowlers, I think, will have a massive role to play because the conditions are likely, I think, in Zimbabwe will favor the spinners a bit. And we've got a lot of spinners in our lineup. So I think that number 3 spot, we do have a good chance. I know the team is pretty confident. I've spoken to Chamari. She's confident because they've got a lot of good young players in this squad as well. So be tough, but I'm expecting them to go through.
They must be looking forward to play some cricket. They haven't played for a long time. And I saw some reports about Ashan Tilakaratne is planning to play some practice games against boys teams as well. So the more cricket they play, the better they will get. And hopefully we'll get into that top 3 spots and make our way to the World Cup. I think we covered a lot and we both got a lot out of this, isn't it, Bora? I mean, we were not up to date about women's cricket in Sri Lanka. And thanks for joining us today. Is there anything you want to add or talk about, Estelle? Anything that we have missed?
Yeah, no, thanks a lot for having me, guys. One thing, I'm really glad you guys are doing it as guys, because in Sri Lanka, I think what I've felt over the past few years is that there's a tendency amongst everybody, not just the administration, but others, to kind of think that they care about the sport. They'll watch cricket if the women are playing, but apart from that, let's leave it to a girl to kind of handle it, right? So there is a bit of a tendency like that, because I've heard people tell me, oh, you should apply to go for the Women's World Cup, things like that. You should also. It doesn't matter if you don't have to be a girl to care about sport. At the
absolutely.
end of the day, it's cricket, right?
Yeah.
It's cricket at the end of the day. So I tell a lot of people who ask me, I don't cover women's sport, I cover sport.
Yeah, so, absolutely.
As guys, you don't have to think, okay, no, let's leave it to a girl to handle it. But I think the more we talk about it, the more administration also will be pushed to try and give them, because they're already investing in them, right, in terms of facilities and stuff. So to just give them that exposure that they need, and down the line, definitely it'll bear fruit.
That's good. I think something I'm keenly following is the under-19 women's tournament. That's been, there's a lot of rescheduling done where it was going to be held this year, but they've pushed it back to 2023. I'm hoping Sri Lanka will be part of that inaugural tournament. I think that's a good stepping stone for the women's sport in Sri Lanka. Your thoughts, you reckon we will be participating on that tournament, Estelle?
Yeah, I think there were plans even before it was rescheduled to get a team together. So it's good that it's been put off. I think overall it's a good thing, because that forces countries to kind of pay attention to that age group level.
Yeah.
Because when you have a good under-19 team, then maybe you can push your clubs get better quality players, your schools start playing more, all of that. So I think it's a good thing because we do have, I think, in Sri Lanka, a couple of really good young players. I think there was, during the last domestic tournament, there was the youngest player, if I'm not mistaken, in both men's and women's cricket to score 100 in List A cricket. So there is a lot of young talent, that's raw talent coming through. So hopefully during that tournament, there'll be good preparation and they'll be able to put up a good team.
That's so good to hear. This has been really great. As I said earlier, we learned a lot, and thanks for joining us, Estelle. And I think we should do this again sometime, maybe in a couple of months, and see where we are at preparing for the Women's World Cup 2022 in New Zealand. But if our listeners want to interact with you, where can they find you, Estelle?
Yeah, you guys can find me on Twitter. I tweet at Estelle Vasudevan, so pretty easy to find. Don't bother following me on Instagram because my life is really boring and there's nothing to see there. So Twitter is the place to be.
I follow you on Twitter. I think you play Fantasy Premier League as well. Is that right?
Yeah. I haven't played this season at all because it's so difficult to keep track of what's happening.
Yeah. But I think just to sum up, thanks a lot, Estelle, being part of our program. On the Crick Zone, they talk about you or describe you. I think there's a small summary saying you're a cricket nut. So I think keep that good work flowing. We're building a good audience with the game of cricket and sport overall in Sri Lanka. And wish you well.
Cricket nut is the word we use to describe ourselves as well. So it doesn't have to be a girl or a boy to be a cricket nut.
No gender there.
And if you like to give us feedback, follow us on our socials, and we will leave all the links in the show notes, and we'll leave Estelle's socials in the show notes as well.
Thanks for listening. See you next time.
Thanks, Estelle.
Thanks, guys.